So good morning, everyone. Welcome to another virtual RV rally. Wow, today we got a really exciting topic. It's going to be Bob Smith coming to us direct from his road trek in Portugal. And I know that Bob's got a lot of information prepared for us. This topic is on many bucket lists. So it's a dream that many of us have to do. So through Bob, we're going to learn how he's done it and the experiences he's had, so that we might too, down the road, replicate his great experience. Bob tells me that he was born in the UK, but his home is actually in Idaho, and that's where his residence actually is. And he has spent his career in the IT programming industry with computers, and tells me that he did spend some time working in Australia. So he's got a wealth of knowledge when it comes to living in different parts of our world. And he's going to share with us how he came to start traveling in Europe, how he got the Roadtrek, and all the experiences he's had. So I'm just so excited, and thank you so much, Bob, for sharing your time. Would you believe he went out and bought a hotspot just 2 days ago so he could connect with really good speed for us? So thanks so much, Bob, for your commitment in presenting to us today, and we'll let you take over from here.
Thanks, Doug, for the great introduction, and welcome everyone. Yes, I've been road trekking in Europe for about 5 years, and often I post where I've been, what I'm doing, and I often get a lot of questions. How did you get your road trek over there, and things like that. So hopefully I can answer most of those questions as we work through this, and then of course open it to any questions you may have. So a little bit background on me. My name is Bob Smith. I've been a road trek owner for 27 years, so I'm pretty committed to the brand. I have a 1995 Chevrolet 190 Independent, based in Boise, Idaho, though I purchased it in California, new. It was great when the kids were young because it slept two young kids and myself and my wife, and so we were able to travel all around California and of course Boise and Utah and all that northwest area. I've always loved my road trek, not so much the family. I can remember for the last 20 years, when are you going to get rid of that road trek, Dad? And of course the answer is never. Unfortunately, in 2015, my wife for 40 years was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. So we had to make some life-changing decisions. So we immediately decided to retire early and travel around Europe. Reason for the Europe thing is that before we had children, we traveled around Europe extensively. My wife is from Australia. I'm originally from the UK. So we did sometimes travel for 6 months at a time. Of course, we were young, so we had a tent and a car, and we did it the hard way. But now we're too old to do that. So I started researching motorhomes for sale in the UK and found, to my delight, a road trek for sale. So anyone who has questions about how do you ship a road trek to Europe, I'm afraid I cannot help you on that. Though I did notice on the message board on the Facebook group we're all members of, there is someone who's recently shipped road trek to Ireland, so maybe Doug can get them to do a session on exactly what that entails. But I was lucky, this was for sale. I immediately made an offer for it. Someone else had already made an offer which it accepted. I just said, hey, if it falls through, I'll pay you the full price. That happens to be about $10,000 US, and of course it came through. I was only the third owner, so the person I purchased it from in the UK had it for 13 years, and he purchased it from from a dealer who the original owner sold it to. So we have no idea who the original owner was who got it over there. My theory is they might have been in the military, where you could have one car shipped over, and they were smart enough to buy a road trek and have that shipped over, so they themselves could travel around Europe for 5 years. But that's purely conjecture on my part. What it meant for us was, though, it was a working unit. In fact, my daughter lives still in the UK, so I had her go with her father-in-law and test it out before we bought it. and she said, "Hey Dad, it's in better condition than your motorhome." So that was a good thing, and that's absolutely been true. We able to start using it, didn't have any mechanical issues, and literally have been using it for 5 years since. Our first trip was a 6-month trip around France. Really the ideal kind of travel for road trek, you know, that's slow travel. We only had one rule when we started out, and that is we were going to go across from Dover to Calais, Calais being the entry point into France, and turn right. That was the only plan we had, and that's what we did. And of course, then you can visit the Normandy beaches if you're a World War II fan, the Somme and other areas for World War I. There's a lot of history there. And basically that's what we did. We didn't have any plan other than to travel slowly. We would only book the next campsite from where we were. We wouldn't book any further ahead than that, and just made our way down. If we wanted to stay a week in a place, we did. If we wanted to stay 2 weeks, we did, etc., etc., and just oodled along. And it's unbelievable to think that you can be in 6 months and still be in the same country, especially in France. The second trip we did a couple of years later was France, Italy, and Greece. And again, on exactly the same basis, that we would choose somewhere to go, book the campsite online, usually the night before, or give them a call sometimes, and then just worked our way down Milan and Venice and Rome and Florence and all those nice places, just working our way down. And we are big fans of Greece, so we got the Roadtrek on the ferry between bottom of Italy and the top of Greece. I think that took about 12 hours on the ferry, and then once we were in Greece, we traveled all around the Peloponnese, and we didn't go to any islands, but we just stayed on the mainland, but again stayed there until it was time to head back to the UK for Christmas. The third trip I did was on my own. My wife had passed away by then, so this time I went to Belgium, Holland, Germany, Poland, Czech Republic, Austria, Slovenia, and Italy, again in the same manner. I didn't plan where to go other than, okay, let's say, for example, when I went to Berlin, I just planned 2 weeks in Berlin, and then I would go sightseeing for 1 day, and then next day take it easy. So again, that whole idea of doing what you want to do at your own pace without feeling rushed is the beauty when you've got time, of course, being retired, and a camper van, as I call it over here, a little road trek which take you where you want to go. And this was during COVID, by the way, so obviously it had its challenges, restrictions on things, wearing masks indoors and on transport and all those kind of things, but it was doable. And right down the bottom near Monaco, you'll see I did a little bit of a dot, because that's the place that I wintered. I spent 5 months in the same campsite in a place called San Remo in Italy. And again, it's nice, easy, just to be able to sit yourself down in a relatively warm area for the winter and just make that your home, and again, move on when you're ready to do so. And this last trip, which is the one I'm in the middle right now, is I'm setting up residency in Portugal. Prior to Brexit, I'm sure you've heard of Brexit, just being a UK passport holder meant I could travel around Europe as much as I wanted. But once Britain left the European Union, I'm now restricted to 90 days at a time. And I'll speak about that in a couple more slides as to what limits are placed on the US, Canadian, and now UK residents. But I applied as a US resident for a retirement visa in Portugal. It took about a year for it to come through, and now I'm in the process of relocating here. It'll probably take me a couple more months before I get all the documentation through and transfer the Roadtrek to Portuguese license plates and get myself a driving license and all those things that come with being a resident. But then I'll be a EU resident and I can stay and travel around the EU as much as I want. Just a couple of photos. This trip was a 1,600-mile trip from England through to the bottom of Portugal. This is me and my little Roadtrek on the train that travels between under the channel between England and France. It's very nice. You drive on. 25 minutes later, when you're in France, you drive off and drive down the road. On part of the journey, you'll see I have a couple of bikes on the back, and I'll talk about those in a second. Here's a place I stopped for lunch just on the way down, I think in France. So again, just very easy driving. I tend to do about 400 miles a day. So I usually leave about 9 in the morning, and with a few stops for lunch and walk in, I can get to my next place in about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And here I am in Portugal. This is what I'm talking to right now. Again, I only set up a couple of days ago, but here I am plugged into electricity and make this my home for the next couple of months probably. So the question is always, well, what's it like road trekking in Europe? Well, in a word, great. I believe that Roadtrek is a perfect size for Europe. The roads, of course, are smaller here, especially you know, in the countryside and the little villages. And some people might even think that the Roadtrek is a little bit large, but that's not true. When I enter these campgrounds, whether that be in Germany or France or Italy or now Portugal, I'm usually one of the smaller camper vans in the campground. So Europe's gone a little bit the way of the US and Canada of, you know, the camper vans are creeping up in size all the time. I've even seen a 40-foot camper in Italy, but here I'd say we're of course 19, 20 feet, but it's not uncommon to see 25 to 30-foot vans in the campgrounds. So to me, it's a perfect size. As far as driving around Europe, if you're comfortable driving in the US and Canada, you shouldn't have any problems driving in Europe. Of course, in most countries, they drive on the same side as the US and Canada, except of course for the UK and Ireland, where you have to learn to drive on the other side of the road. It's a bit odd for the first few days, but again, like everything in life, you get used to it. The freeways here are excellent. In some countries like France and Italy, they're tolled, so you'll pay for your usage, but they save gas compared to taking the non-toll roads. So, you know, you don't lose any money and you get excellent roads, tunnels, rest stops, restaurants and everything on the freeway. So they're very good. It's very easy. I tend to stay out of city centers, historic towns, because again, it gets a bit difficult there. Some of the roads are very small. There's a lot of traffic and it just isn't much fun. So just using common sense is a way forward. When I'm camping, I camp around 10 miles outside the cities. So again, I've been doing this for a long time, so I know. I find city campgrounds in places like Berlin, Amsterdam, and that are too crowded, too noisy, and too expensive. So if I'm looking to go, say, to Berlin, I'll look at campgrounds and I'll see which ones are out, and I'll look for something around 10, 12 miles outside the city, more space, less noise, and again, somewhere I can stay for a couple of weeks without feeling going crazy. And then I use my e-bike to ride in and explore. So my e-bike has a range of up to 60 miles. So it's quite convenient for me to ride in. I don't have to worry about parking, and I can go to, especially in big cities, right to the area I want to. If I want to go to the cathedral, I can go right by the cathedral, lock up my bike, and then walk around. And If I want to go to the museum area, I can do the same. So quite often when you're touring around cities, you end up doing miles and miles of walking, and that's good, but it can also get tiring. So I find using the bike much easier. I'd rather be doing my walking in the museum than just trying to get to the museum. So I find that that lifestyle works very well for me, and it's kind of hassle-free. I know a lot of the folks on our Facebook group do boondocking, but it's not really a thing in Europe. Europe's not big enough. There's not enough space. So I always stay in campgrounds. Not a problem for me because I enjoy the electricity and the comfort that comes with that. But I would think it will be very difficult to try to boondock your way around Europe. Campsite prices vary greatly. You can pay the equivalent of $30 for a night. Here in Portugal, I'm currently paying only $12 a night. So yes, it just depends on where you go. And again, I've got a slide on the cost of traveling in Europe as well. There is one significant downside of road trekking in Europe, and that is the price of gas. So it typically works out around $9 to $10 per gallon. And when you realize we're only doing about 15 miles per gallon, it's pretty painful traveling around. If I let the gas go down a bit low when I'm doing these long journeys, and I end up putting 20 plus gallons in the Roadtrek, I'll end up paying $200 for that fill. So it hurts. However, to offset this, generally speaking, distances are generally short in Europe. So a 2-hour drive can find you in a different country with a different language, different cuisine, different culture. So generally speaking, when you're not doing a large journey like I've just done, you can travel around fairly inexpensively. And as I mentioned, I wintered in San Remo for 5 months, and therefore I wasn't buying any gas, hardly any gas at all during that time. So it's just a matter of balancing it to make sure you're not doing, you know, what like you do in the Western US, where you're driving miles and miles and miles all the time. And of course, it's much cheaper than hotels. Another question, is Europe expensive? Well, I say yes and no, because Europe isn't one homogeneous place. It's a very diverse place, and I suppose it's like saying, is the US expensive? Well, it depends. If you're in New York City or Seattle or Vancouver, the answer is yes. But if you're in Kentucky, Idaho and places like that, then less so. And that's true of Europe. So what I qualify as expensive Europe is Scandinavia. So Denmark, Norway, Sweden and Finland, you're paying top dollar for most things. For example, if you went out for a burger and a beer, you'll be paying about $25 to $30 for that burger and beer. More normal Europe, I would say Germany, France, Holland, Austria, those kind of countries are probably 20% more expensive than US. So a little bit more expensive, but certainly not scary. Inexpensive Europe, I would classify Italy. And Italy, of course, is a great country for traveling in because there's so many wonderful sights to see. Croatia, the Czech Republic, some of those middle European countries are quite inexpensive. And then you even have cheap Europe. So where I am now, Portugal, Spain, Greece, and a lot of Eastern Europe, Romania, Bulgaria, and things like that are actually much cheaper than the US. So again, the answer is yes and no, depends where you go. You can choose your budget. The good thing is, as we experienced in France, doesn't matter where you go in Europe, each country is interesting, it's got a lot to see. So whether, like in that last trip, I went to Slovenia and went to a place called Lake Bled, and it's very beautiful, and you know, there's lots of places to discover and find. So I'm very confident that traveling around Europe, I'm not going to run out of interesting places to go and see. Budget wise, I tend to budget around $4,000 a month, US dollars. Typically breakdown is 1,500 accommodation. Again, that can be from 500 to 1,500 depending where you are, what time of year. Of course, it's more expensive in July and August when the Europeans are taking their holidays, and a lot cheaper in December through March when nobody's taking holidays. And again, in places like Portugal and Spain, it's going to be a lot cheaper than France and Germany. $1,000 travel includes fuel, tolls, all those kind of things that you end up paying to keep the motor home moving, and about $1,500 on food and sightseeing. To be honest, I rarely spend that much, but that's the mindset I have in terms of knowing what to budget and what to keep, and understanding that I'll go above that during the peak months and well below that during the off-peak months. Some considerations for US and Canadian travelers when you come to Europe. No visa is required if you're going to come for up to 90 days. Now, again, this doesn't help folks who are trying to ship their Roadtrek over, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But if you just want to come over and rent a van, for example, you get up to 90 days without the need for a visa. But it's important that you keep track of that. So it's actually a little bit more complicated. You get 90 days out of 180 days in what they call the Schengen area, which you can see here is all that purple area. And if you overstay that 90 days, the penalty is severe. What I mean by that is you will be banned from coming back to Europe for 5 years. So it's not something you want to inadvertently make a mistake on. So, and the 90 days includes the day you arrive and the day you leave. So I think the right mindset is, if once you get about 85 days, get out of there so you don't run risk of running foul. And if you did have a motorhome, you could do things like, okay, spend 90 days in Europe proper, but then go across to England or England, the UK and Ireland, spend 90 days in there. They're not in the Schengen area, so you could work out your 90 days there and then come back into Europe for another 90 days. Or you could, if you had bought a motorhome or bought over your Roadtrek, you could park it there and then go back to the States for 90 days if you wanted to and come back. So you've got lots of options, but you do need to be aware of that 90 days within 180 days. And just one last slide here talking about a longer term option for folks who want to look at retiring overseas, which is what I'm doing primarily. Is Portugal often comes up if you look at places for people to retire from the US and Canada. You'll see Portugal comes up top 5 along with Panama and Costa Rica and some nice places there. And usually it comes up as number 1 in Europe. And the reason for that is there is a low cost of living. For example, yesterday I went out and got a coffee and a cake in a local cafeteria, and it cost me $1. So, it's hard to spend your money here. It's low crime place. I think the 3rd lowest in Europe. It has good weather and it has good healthcare. So if you take up residency here, you get healthcare. And in the EU, once you have healthcare in any one of the EU countries, you've got healthcare in any of the 27 EU countries should you get sick. And it's relatively easy to qualify for the retirement visa. You have to have an income of about $2,500 a month, pension and savings. And, then you go through the process. As I say, it took me 12 months, but I wasn't in any kind of hurry. And now that I've done it, you learn how to do it. I could probably do it in 6 months next time around. And I get ability to stay here for 10 years. And the sweetener is there's no tax for those 10 years in Portugal. So it's a very sweet deal. When I come to Europe for a few years, I would say it's worth your while investigating that. And outside of this call, anyone wants to message me, I'd be happy to talk to them about my experience and how we went. So that was my kind of overview. Hopefully I've addressed some of your questions, but now I'm open to any questions you may have. Okay, I can see some questions in the typed here. Power standards at campgrounds, compatibility, Roadtrek, power adapters required. Okay, good question. So this campground is a little bit old. So first of all, let me say that the normal 30 amp plug that you get with your Roadtrek fits 9 out of 10 of the campground. So I just plug in normal. And although it has over here, it is 220. So I'm not sure if anything was done with this Roadtrek to make it compatible, or whether they are multi voltage, but all I do is plug in the normal 30 amp plug and I'm fine. This is an older style campground, so they actually have just the normal plugs that you plug your toaster into, and so I have an adapter for that, both for the UK and for Europe. And so I plugged my adapter into the 30 amp and that gets me the power the same way. So not a problem.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Wow, what a great presentation, by the way. Well organized and a good synopsis of not only your experiences, but some ideas on how we might replicate your journey. I might suggest that you stop your screen sharing, so then we can see who we're really talking to in a little bit larger screen instead of a postage stamp.
Okay.
We have a question here about the dumping tanks. Is that similar to what we're used to here in America?
Yes. Thankfully, it's the usual dump station in campgrounds. There aren't, in none of the campgrounds I've been are like the big ones you get in the US. You know, they are like, say, a KOA in terms of you're close to other people, but they don't usually have options of water connection and storage connection at your own campsite. All you get really is electricity, and then there's a dumping station. And so, yeah, I usually, when I'm in one place, every 10 days to 2 weeks, when I think it's getting a bit full, I'll take it over to the dump station. No difference. Pull out the thing, pull your plugs, flush them out. No difference whatsoever.
Okay, great. Another question we had was, how do you find the campgrounds that you go to? Would you have an app over in Europe similar to what we have in America?
Yeah, I don't use any apps, and most of the campgrounds aren't like, there aren't many groups like KOA or the others. But I just, if I'm going like here, I wanted to come to the Algarve in Portugal, I'll just get on Google and I'll Google campgrounds around a town, and then it'll show me, and then I'll click on the links and see what they have available. And like this campground, which is pretty large, there was no, they don't take reservations for camping. So you just turn up and, you know, as long as they've got space, and we're still in the shoulder season. But I made sure I got here at, you know, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, not 6 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'm not competing with everyone for spaces. And of course, there was no problem. I could just come in and pick my own space. And so it's easy. So the only thing we found in France when we were traveling around is that, because we were hugging the coast most of the way, then on the weekends, most of the campgrounds on the coast were full, because that's where everyone goes. So we would then go into the city for the weekend, which were less busy. And then come Monday, we would head back out to the coast. So as long as you're flexible, it's very easy to use Google and, you know, just look around and find the ones. Like I say, when I'm going somewhere like a big city like Berlin, there'll be maybe 5 or 6 campgrounds to choose from. I'll ignore the ones close in the city because that's great if you're 20 years old, not so great when you're 70 years old. But then I'll look at the maps, how long a ride is it into the city, and just generally look at the reviews. And yeah, so it's very easy to do, and I don't do it. It was funny, in the one in the Berlin, I wrote to them because I didn't have any ability to book on site, which again is not uncommon here. And they wrote back to me and said, "Oh, we don't accept any foreigners." I was like, "What do you mean?" "Oh, we've had foreigners in the past and they caused trouble and things like that." So I wrote back to them and said in German, not that I speak German, but use Google Translate, and said, "Hey, I'm just a single 69-year-old man. I'm quiet." And they said, "Okay then." So I was the only one non-English speaker in the campground, and it was a great place to stay for a couple of weeks. So just,
great.
if you come into Europe, just be flexible.
Yeah. So if you did not have an e-bike, would you still be able to get around and get into the city from the campsite, or would that be difficult?
Yeah, I mean, most campgrounds, again, it's a matter of reading the website that tell you, but most campgrounds, especially for the big cities, have public transport, whether it be metro, a bus, a train. For example, Prague was a good example. The campsite I picked outside of Prague was only about 10 miles away, but when I rode in on the bike, it was downhill all the way. I'm thinking, wow, I'm not looking forward to cycling that back, even with an e-bike. But I was able to jump on the train with my bike and then get the train out and then bike from the train station. And then for the rest of the week, I would ride my e-bike to the train station. They had specific parking for bikes. So make sure you lock up your bike in Europe. If you don't lock up your bike, it's not going to be there when you come back. But then I would get the train in, and it's just a matter of, again, being flexible, seeing what works. There's always people to help you. So I don't have any problems with it.
So did you find that people are welcoming when they see the Roadtrek coming along? Do they receive you well?
I've only had one offer to purchase it so far, but I often get the thumbs up and the toot toot when I'm driving. It's less an admiration for the Roadtrek and more an admiration for the Dodge. They love Dodge vans over here, so that's what usually gets people excited. It's a Dodge van, and of course it's 5.2 liters, and they're very interested in that American history of Dodge trucks.
So then that begs another question, which is repairs and getting parts. If you break down, if Dodge vans are popular there, then can we assume that repairs and parts are not a major problem?
Yes and no. I've been lucky, touch wood, because in the insurance I get through the UK, because the van is over 20 years old, they don't offer breakdown coverage. So if I break down, I'm on my own. Luckily, touch wood, in all the miles I've done, the Dodge is ultra reliable. I have found places in the UK that specialize in American vehicles, so I get my services done there. I carry, of course, spare fan belts and all the essentials. And when I need things, like I needed new windshield wipers and things like that, I just go online to the Rock, or I can't remember, the US websites, order the stuff and have it shipped over. It usually only takes a couple of weeks. So if I need work done, I get the parts first, then I take it to someone who's willing to work on it.
Very good. Samson had asked a question about potable water. Any problems to find potable water along your way?
No, for example, in every campground, just a short walking distance between the Roadtrek is a tap with potable water. So I tend not to use the tanks in the Roadtrek. I tend to use 2 or 3 1.5 liter bottles and keep them filled up and just use them from there. But no, all the water's drinkable. It's very civilized. So no problems with water.
And do you
Again,
use the,
Europeans tend to like to buy water. I don't understand. If you go to, when you're in Italy, around every campground, around every motorhome, are 6 bottles of brand new bottled water. I think it's a horrible waste of plastic, but it's in their culture to do that. Whereas I'll take tap water every time.
very good. And the other question you touched on briefly and said that the healthcare was good, but if we're coming over from America for an extended period, how would we go about getting safe healthcare? Do we just buy travel insurance and go that way, or is there another way?
Yeah, the best way is to buy travel insurance. If you're buying travel insurance that does not include the US, then it's relatively inexpensive. And then here you just go. If you go see a doctor, you go to ER, no one will ask you for your insurance. They will just treat you first, and then sometimes they'll bill you and sometimes they won't. So a couple of times when I was traveling with my wife, we went to see a doctor in France. We stayed in a place for 5 or 6 weeks, and in there you go in, no appointment necessary, is open from 9 till 12, 5 days a week. You go in, you look at who's in there so you know when your turn is. And if you're not sure, you ask and someone say, yeah, I'm the last person. And then everyone goes in. You might wait an hour to be seen. And then we went in, saw the doctor. He brought out a thing. We paid him $23, and that was the cost of the visit. When I was in the UK, we went to the National Health Service, no questions asked. They have no means of billing you, and so it didn't cost us a penny. So it just depends. But
Oh, wow.
travel insurance is inexpensive and easy to, healthcare is easy to access here in Europe.
Oh, great. The other thing that I was
sorry, last word on that, because we're in a small town in France, the doctor didn't speak English. So we had a few prepared translations to tell him what, in writing to give him. But then when he needed to talk to us, he called his daughter who spoke English, and he spoke to us through his daughter who translated for us. So people were very, very helpful.
Yeah, usually the teenagers speak English because they're taking it at school. And
yeah, so I always say if they're
I,
under 30, the chances are they speak English. If they're over 60, they don't.
The other one I found that is very handy for translating around the world is the doorman at a big hotel. Most of the doormen at the major hotels all speak English. And especially if you're trying to go somewhere in a taxi and the taxi driver doesn't understand it, usually the doorman of a hotel will help you.
Yes, very true. Very true.
Another one that I know the answer, but the others will be interested, is your Wi-Fi connection. And I know that you went out and bought a hotspot a day or two ago when you got to Portugal, so you'd have good coverage, and the signal is coming through very well. But I think our group on here will be super shocked at the price you're paying for your Wi-Fi.
Yes, so what I tend to find, it's true, I think also in the US, is that campgrounds provide free Wi-Fi, but it's pretty poor Wi-Fi. And I still do quite a bit of work. I like to watch soccer on things. So I like to stream things. So when I was in Italy for 5 months, and now the same here in Portugal, I knew this was coming up. And so I just went along to the local, one of the local phone companies. I Googled who the phone companies were in Portugal. I'd never been here before. They gave me 3 names. I read a couple of reviews. I went to the local shopping center on my e-bike. I went in, I asked them what plans they have. They said, well, for pay as you go, they said, well, we got 2, and they spoke English. We got 2 plans. One you prepay, and it's 40 euros a month. And I said, well, how much do you get for that? And they said, unlimited. Or there's post pay, and that's 30 euros a month. And, we just bill you, and then you have to tell us when to stop. And I said, what, same for unlimited? Yes, unlimited. So now I don't have to worry. I've got the internet on all the time. And I said, well, what happens when I go to a different EU country? They said, oh, then it's limited to only 19 gigabytes, which is plenty. So I'm just going to pay 30 gigabytes a month and have all the internet usage that I want to pretty much throughout Europe. So yes, and all they do is put an extra SIM. I have a smartphone that allows 2 SIMs. So I've got my UK phone number one and the Italian. They're younger than me, so they put it in for me and made sure it was working. And an hour later, I'm walking out with excellent internet service.
Great. So do we have any other questions from the group here? If so, feel free to press your space bar and turn on your mic to ask in person. Or if you're shy, just go to the reactions button and put your hand up, because we've got a great resource here sharing RVing in Europe, and we'll open it for anyone who wants.
There is one other question here, and what is my plans after Portugal? And so my plans are a little bit topsy-turvy, because when I applied for the visa, they give me dates. You have to be in Portugal by the end of May, which I've done, and I've got my full interview in July. So I'm topsy-turvy, but my usual plan is to spend the summer months in Northern Europe. So that could be Denmark or Germany or Holland, those kind of countries, and the southern months in Southern Europe, Italy, Greece, Spain. I'm not a great fan of the hot temperatures, so I just prefer, and I'm not a great fan of cold temperatures, so I try to do that topsy-turvy. It also keeps me out of the, expensive places, like, for example, the south of France in August is going to be busy, crowded, and expensive. So I'll go north, and where the places are less crowded, less expensive, and then I'll head to the south of France in October, November, and enjoy a mild climate and less crowds and less cost. So it's topsy-turvy right now. I'm going to be in southern Portugal for the next 3 months, but that's for a specific purpose, and that is to get my residency. Outside of that, I'll follow the sun.
So your Portugal residency is more a logistical, administrative convenience. You're not planning on living there permanently. You're still going to wander about?
Correct. The good thing about the EU is that once you're in it, they have no idea where you are, meaning there are no border checks. So driving between Portugal and Spain is the same as driving from Idaho to Utah. You just cross the border and something says, "Welcome to Spain," and that's it. You've changed and nobody knows where you are. So I'll have residency in Portugal, but how much time I'll spend in Portugal will be entirely up to me. There's no one there to check on you.
Good. And there's no taxes.
And there's no taxes on anything that I earn in the US, worldwide. Only if I earn taxes earned income in Portugal would I be subject to tax, and I do not intend to do that.
Very good.
This is Al.
Go ahead, Al.
In the beginning, you said that you traveled back and forth between Canada and Europe. Where did you store your Roadtrek during those early days?
So two things really. So my Boise Roadtrek is in a storage area in Boise, and then I also have a storage area in the UK for this Roadtrek. So I only pay about $400 a year. So if I know I'm going to leave the Roadtrek for 3 months, for example, I recently went to Australia for a couple of months, then I'll drive the Roadtrek back to my storage place in the UK and park it there, and then come back and pick it up when I want to. But when I was in San Remo for 5 months, if I was going back for Christmas for 3 weeks, I'd just leave my motorhome there and still carry on paying. I was paying a monthly rate of about $750 a month. So I just left it there and flew back for a small airfare cost, and flew back again when I was ready.
Very good. That was also a question I wondered about the storage, because I know you mentioned you have family in the UK, so I didn't know if they helped with the storage. But it's it can be expensive if you don't look around. But are these outdoor storage lots, Bob?
Yes, these are outdoor storage locks. So the one I use is it's got about I think about 800. Mainly caravans. For some reason, again, culturally, the UK are like 70% caravans and 30% motorhomes. But it's highly secure. It's all gated. You're going to have a special pass to get in. They record every in, every out. There's cameras everywhere. There's barbed wire everywhere. It's very, very safe. And it's relatively inexpensive when you pay the annual fee per year.
Yeah,
So,
that's fairly reasonable.
Yes, and again, it took me a while to find. I probably called 15 to 20 places, and they were all full. And this place said, "Oh, we're opening an extension. Would you like me to put your name on the list?" And I said, "Yes, please." And they called me back about 6 months later and said, "Okay, we got a space." And I said, "I'll take it."
So how do you work your unit sitting that long? We talk about having to exercise the own generator every 6 weeks. In mine, I keep it in indoor storage. So I like to drive it again every 6 weeks. I'll take it for a 20-minute drive. I'll run the generator for an hour or so under load. Is there any concerns with that, or is there any services that they would do that for you?
Well, so in Boise, all I do is I park the motorhome. I was back there in June, July, so I use it as my vehicle when I was there. But I park it in an outdoor area. I disconnect the battery. Then I have a neighbor who goes there every 3 months, just once every 3 months, connects the battery, takes it for 30-minute spin, exercises the air conditioning and those kind of things, and parks it back for me, disconnects the battery, and that's fine. No
Oh, that's
generator on my motorhome in the US. I do have a generator here, but I've never used it, so it's ruined by now. I've had this for 5 years. It's never been exercised. If I was the kind of person who was more attentive, I'd probably take it out to save lumping it around. But again, I never need it. I don't boondock. I'm always connected to electricity, so it's just a thing that I ignore, and so I don't worry about that. If I leave the motorhome here for more than a week, I disconnect the battery the same way, so that when I come back, I've never had a problem with it restarting, even after several months.
So if we were going to start planning a trip over there, I think the first question is the offset of shipping your own Roadtrek over there versus trying to either rent or buy one. And I don't know if you analyzed that or not at all, or heard any other campers mention it. And the second part of that question would be, if you were going to look to buy a Roadtrek, where would you look if you wanted to buy one in Europe?
Well, I'd say that certainly when we reached that position where we wanted to go to Europe and we wanted to travel around on it for an extensive period of time, I immediately discounted renting, because I don't like paying $100+ a day. I don't like the restrictions of when you pick it up, how many kilometers. There's a lot of hassle that doesn't suit my temperament to do that. So it was a non-starter. So buying one was certainly my preference. I had no idea about to buy a Roadtrek. Pure luck. As soon as I saw it, of course, it was like home. So I went straight for it. But generally speaking, if anything happened to this Roadtrek and it was not salvageable, I would simply, I say simply, I haven't done it, but I've looked into it. I'd probably go to Germany. I would look at vans for sale between 5 and 10 years old. I'd expect to spend about $30,000 to $40,000 on buying one, and you know, maybe a 10-year-old one less, maybe $30,000, and I'd use that. So I
Would you
know
just
this is a
Google
road
that?
trek club, but the chances of buying a road trek here are very low because there's just not many.
Would you
I
just
was
Google
lucky.
that then, or are there sites that offer RVs for sale over there in Germany?
I did sign up to one site for a while and got updates, but yeah, Google is my go-to place to find these things out. I'm sure there are places to join that show secondhand. I haven't had to do it, but I'm confident that's what I would do if this, you know, I kind of feel like I'm on, you know, I'm just lucky that this road trek has been going so well, and I hope it continues, but I'm prepared if it doesn't. You know, it's a 22, 23-year-old vehicle. So I'm perfectly prepared to upgrade when I need to. And that's how I would do it. Yeah, maybe in places like Portugal and Spain, it might be even cheaper. I don't know, but I just know that there tends to be a lot of decent size motorhomes in Central Europe, Germany, and places like that. And that's where I tend to go.
Okay, great. Well, any other questions?
I
Feel
suppose
free to
I'd
come on.
only thing I'd add is if you think about doing it, don't let worries put you off. It is very doable. It's very enjoyable. If you love Europe like I do, and the history and the cultures and the language, then you know, go for it. And I'll be happy to offline answer any questions anyone may have on what they want to do, where they'd like to go, etc., etc.
So Bob, maybe you could just type your email address into the chat box, and then people can just copy and paste it for future reference if they wish.
Okie doke.
So one last call for questions. Great presentation by Bob, and something that I think has created a lot of interest. And as Bob has offered to communicate with you directly if you need to. Any last minute questions? Well, sounds like you've done a good job, Bob. So once again, we really appreciate you taking the time to prepare this presentation. It's always great to follow in the footsteps of people who have already done it and learn from their experiences. And I'm sure there's highs and a few lows, but sounds like a lot of highs to me. And so we look forward to maybe the opportunity of coming to Europe and hooking up with you on the road somewhere.
Don't hesitate to reach out if you've got some questions about Europe. Happy to help out.
Okay, well, thank you again. Good to see everyone here, and hopefully we'll see you on the road. I'm proud to share the news that the end of next week, I'm headed to Houston from Ontario, Canada in my Roadtrek. So we'll be attending a convention there, and we didn't want to be sandwiched onto an airplane just yet. So we're going to head out to Houston, and hopefully we'll see some of you on the road somewhere. So take care, everyone.
That's quite a drive. Thanks. Bye.